Harper Lewis stood motionless in the rain, clutching a birthday cupcake as she watched her boyfriend and best friend kiss through a foggy window. The cruel Instagram post still glowed on her phone. She never deserved him. Fat girls don't keep real men. In that moment of betrayal, something inside her shattered, and something else began to form. 6 months later, Harper disappeared completely. No social media, no goodbye. Just a torn medical form left behind and whispered rumors throughout their small Arizona town. But while Madison planned her perfect wedding to Ethan, posting photos of diamond rings and venue tours, Harper was fighting a battle nobody knew about, one that would transform her inside and out. Now, as Madison walks down the aisle in her designer gown, a mysterious woman in blue slips into the back of the church. When the priest asks if anyone objects to this union, she stands, an envelope in her trembling hands, ready to reveal the truth that will shake their perfect world to its foundation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. This story will break your heart and then heal it in ways you never expected. The Arizona sun cast long shadows across Flagstaff's Main Street as Harper Lewis stood motionless, a small cupcake clutched in her trembling hands. The cheap Walgreens pastry purchased with carefully saved coupon clippings felt impossibly heavy as she watched through the fog-streaked window of Joe's coffee shop. There, in the parking lot not 20 feet away, was Ethan. Her Ethan. His strong arms wrapped around someone else. Not just someone else. Madison Reeves. Her best friend since 3rd grade. Harper's breath caught in her throat as Madison tilted her face upward, her perfectly glossed lips meeting Ethan's in a kiss that seemed to stretch into eternity. The autumn wind whipped around Harper's fuller figure, carrying the metallic scent of approaching rain that somehow tasted like betrayal on her tongue. She didn't scream, didn't run across the street, didn't create the scene that any reasonable person might expect. Instead, Harper pressed the small birthday cupcake against her chest, feeling the frosting seep through her discount department store blouse, the nice one she'd saved for today, for her 24th birthday. The birthday Ethan had texted that morning he was too busy to celebrate. Too busy, she whispered, the words dissolving in the crisp mountain air as Madison laughed at something Ethan said, her slender fingers caressing his jawline with possessive confidence. Harper's phone vibrated in her pocket. Instinctively, she pulled it out, her eyes never leaving the couple as they climbed into Ethan's beat-up Chevy. The notification was still there, the Instagram post she'd discovered 3 hours earlier while getting ready for her shift at the diner. She never deserved him. Fat girls don't keep real men. Upgrade? Sorry, not sorry. Posted by Madison. Reeves, 98. Accompanied by a selfie of Madison's face pressed against Ethan's chest, his varsity football jacket draped around her shoulders. The same jacket he'd given Harper on their 3rd date when she'd shivered during the outdoor movie at Oak Creek Canyon. A passing truck sped through a puddle, sending a wave of dirty water across Harper's jeans and sneakers. She didn't flinch. The cold shock barely registered. Nobody stopped to help. Nobody even slowed down. In a town of 30,000, Harper Lewis might as well have been invisible. It wasn't until her knees hit the rough asphalt that Harper realized she'd collapsed. The cupcake was crushed between her fingers, blue frosting mixing with the rainwater that now fell in earnest. Her whole body shook, not from the cold seeping through her clothes, but from the humiliation burning through her veins. Got to get up, she mumbled, mascara-stained tears blurring her vision. Can't let them see me like this. But who would see her? Who had ever truly seen her? A weathered hand appeared in her field of vision, belonging to an elderly man in a faded plaid coat. His eyes, deep-set beneath bushy white eyebrows, held something Harper hadn't seen directed at her in a long time. Genuine concern. "You all right there, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice carrying the gravel of decades of cigarettes and hard living. Harper couldn't speak, could only shake her head as he helped her to her feet. The man reached into his pocket, offering her a clean handkerchief, the kind nobody carried anymore. "I've been around long enough to recognize heartbreak when I see it," he said quietly, nodding toward the coffee shop where Ethan's car had been. "Whoever they are, They ain't worth destroying yourself over. Harper took the handkerchief, the monogrammed EJM in the corner oddly comforting. I trusted them both, she finally managed, her voice barely audible above the patter of rain. My boyfriend. And my best friend since elementary school. The old man's expression hardened for a moment before softening again. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his touch oddly paternal. Daughter, he said softly, his Arizona drawl more pronounced with emotion. Those who are still crying are still living. Don't you go dying for somebody who never lived for you. Something in his words, perhaps their simple truth, cut through Harper's fog of humiliation. She looked up, really seeing him now, the kindness in his weathered face, the wisdom of someone who'd weathered his own storms. Thank you, she whispered, returning his handkerchief. He shook his head, folding her fingers back over it. Keep it. Might need it again before this storm passes. As he walked away, disappearing into the gathering dusk, Harper watched the taillights of Ethan's car vanish around a distant corner. Madison's laughter seemed to echo in her mind, mixing with the cruel words that had illuminated her phone screen. Standing there, soaked to the skin with rain and shame, Harper Lewis made a promise to herself. The words came unbidden, whispered with a conviction that surprised even her. I will never again be the ground where they walk. She looked down at the ruined cupcake, at her stained clothes, at the phone still clutched in her hand displaying Madison's cruel post. For the first time in years, something steely and unfamiliar uncurled in her chest. Not just anger or hurt, but resolve. Harper wiped her tears one final time and began walking toward her small apartment on the edge of town. Behind her, the lights of downtown Flagstaff glowed against the darkening sky, but she didn't look back. Not at the coffee shop where Ethan had first asked for her number. Not at the bookstore where Madison had helped her pick out novels every summer since middle school. Not at the park bench where the three of them had spent countless evenings planning futures that now seemed like cruel jokes. As she walked, the rain slowly stopped and a strange calm settled over her. Harper Lewis, the invisible girl, the forgotten friend, the discarded girlfriend, felt something shift inside her. The birthday that had begun with hopeful anticipation and ended in betrayal had changed her in ways she couldn't yet understand. At the crossroads leading to her apartment complex, Harper paused, looking up at the clearing sky where the first stars were becoming visible. The old man's words echoed in her mind, "Don't you go dying for somebody who never lived for you." She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and whispered to the night air, "I won't." In that moment, something irreversible had begun, a transformation born of betrayal, watered by tears and hardened by resolve. Harper Lewis had no way of knowing how this promise would reshape her life, nor could she imagine the day she would return to face those who had broken her. But that day would come, and when it did, she would no longer be invisible. Flagstaff had a way of whispering secrets, even when nobody was talking. 2 weeks after Harper's birthday, she had effectively vanished from her usual social circles. Her shift manager at Oakwood Diner reported she'd called in sick, then requested emergency personal leave. Her regular table at the library, tucked behind the American history section where the morning light was perfect for reading, remained empty. Her modest apartment still had lights on at odd hours, but nobody had seen her actually enter or leave the building. Meanwhile, Madison's Instagram had transformed into a digital shrine to her relationship with Ethan. Photos of them hiking the San Francisco peaks, sipping artisanal beers at historic brewing company, and cuddling at weekend bonfires flooded her feed. Each post meticulously tagged with phrases like "nah, perfect match" and "nosh, upgrade complete." "You really shouldn't be posting that stuff," Ethan mumbled one evening as they sat in his apartment, Madison scrolling through filter options for their latest couple selfie. "Why not?" Madison challenged, her perfectly manicured finger hovering over the share button. "Embarrassed to be dating me instead of your charity project?" Ethan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his gaze drifting toward the window. Outside, fat snowflakes had begun to fall, the first November flurries arriving early this year. The silence between them stretched uncomfortably until Madison's triumphant "posted" broke the tension. Across town, In a sterile examination room that smelled of antiseptic and false hope, Harper sat on the edge of a paper-covered table, her fingers clutching a manila folder. Dr. Reynolds, a woman in her 50s with prematurely silver hair and kind eyes behind practical glasses, placed a gentle hand on Harper's shoulder. "I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, especially now," she said, her voice practiced in delivering difficult news. "But catching it early gives us options. Good options." Harper nodded mechanically, her mind still processing the words printed on the papers inside the folder. Stage 2, aggressive, treatment plan, survival rates. The clinical language felt surreal, as if describing someone else's body, someone else's future, not the betrayal that had been silently growing inside her for months, perhaps years, while she worried about trivial things like boyfriend betrayals and social media cruelty. "Do you have someone who can come with you to the next appointment?" Dr. Reynolds asked, her pen poised over the scheduling form. "Family? A close friend? It helps to have support." A hollow laugh escaped Harper's lips before she could stop it. "I'm between support systems at the moment," she said, surprising herself with the dark humor. "My mother's in Phoenix dealing with her own health issues, and my best friend is—" Her voice trailed off. Dr. Reynolds didn't press. Instead, she wrote something on a separate prescription pad, tearing it off and handing it to Harper. "This is the contact information for our patient support group. I want you to call them, today." Harper folded the paper carefully and tucked it into her wallet, knowing she wouldn't call. The thought of sitting in a circle, exposing her fears to strangers while they shared platitudes about strength and courage, made her stomach turn. Or maybe that was just another symptom. That night, seated on the cold tile of her bathroom floor at 3:17 a.m., Harper scrolled mindlessly through her phone. A notification popped up, a direct message from Ethan. Her heart lurched traitorously before she could remind it how to behave. "Can we talk?" The message glowed in the darkness, simple and insufficient. Harper's thumb hovered over the keyboard. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared as Ethan typed something else. "I miss you. Things aren't what they seem with M." A wave of exhaustion washed over Harper that had nothing to do with her diagnosis. She closed the message without responding and opened her camera roll instead, scrolling back to photos from summer. Before the betrayal, before the diagnosis. Her finger stopped on a picture of her, Ethan, and Madison at Lake Mary, their faces sun-kissed and smiling. They looked happy. They looked healthy. They looked like people who would never hurt each other. With methodical precision, Harper began deleting photos. One by one, she erased the visual evidence of friendships and love that had proven as substantial as morning mist. When she finished, she stood up slowly, steadying herself against the sink as a wave of dizziness passed through her. Another new companion she was becoming acquainted with. The bathroom mirror reflected a stranger. Hollowed cheeks, shadows beneath her eyes, skin that had lost its warmth. Harper reached up and touched her hair, wondering how long before that too would be gone. "At least I'll finally be skinny," she whispered to her reflection, a bitter joke that no one else would understand, especially not Madison with her casual cruelty about Harper's weight. The following morning, Harper made 2 decisions. First, she scheduled her first treatment session. Second, she packed a small suitcase with essentials. The apartment lease was month to month. She could let it go without penalty. Flagstaff, with its small-town gossip and painful memories, had nothing left to offer her. On her kitchen counter, she left a torn medical form, just the corner with the diagnosis visible, the rest mysteriously absent. A small, petty act that would leave questions if anyone bothered to look for her. She wasn't sure why she did it, except perhaps as evidence that she had existed, that her disappearance wasn't without reason. As she loaded her meager belongings into her used Honda Civic, Mrs. Abernathy from the apartment next door watched through half-drawn blinds. Harper knew the older woman had overheard her crying through the thin walls these past weeks. Their eyes met briefly, and Mrs. Abernathy's expression held something like concern, but neither spoke. Some boundaries remained unbroken even in tragedy. Later that afternoon, Madison's phone chimed with a notification as she and Ethan sat at Macy's European Coffee House. "Harper finally deleted me on Instagram," she announced, her tone more triumphant than troubled. "Guess she finally got the message." Ethan's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "You didn't have to be so cruel about it online," he said quietly. "She didn't deserve that." Madison's perfectly lined eyes narrowed. "If you're having second thoughts—" "I'm not," Ethan interrupted quickly. Too quickly. "It's just, we've all been friends for years." "Friends outgrow each other," Madison replied with practiced wisdom, reaching for his hand. "Besides, I did her a favor. Now she can find someone more appropriate." As they resumed their conversation, shifting to wedding venues and guest lists that Madison had already begun researching, neither noticed the small manila envelope that had been placed on their table by a passing server. By the time they discovered it, Harper's car was already merging onto Interstate 17, heading south toward Phoenix and whatever remained of her future. Inside the envelope, a single photograph of the three of them from years ago, torn precisely down the middle. On the back, in Harper's neat handwriting, "Some cancers you can cut out." The Greyhound bus station in Flagstaff smelled of diesel fumes and abandoned dreams. Harper sat on a hard plastic bench, a duffel bag at her feet and her mother's worn leather purse clutched in her lap. She had sold most of her clothes to Buffalo Exchange for a fraction of their worth, traded her modest collection of vintage vinyl records for cash at Bookman's, and pawned the silver bracelet Ethan had given her for Christmas. The emergency fund she'd been building, originally intended for community college tuition, would now cover her immediate medical expenses and temporary housing in Phoenix. Snow had begun to fall outside, the flakes dancing beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of the station. Harper watched them through the streaked window, remembering childhood winters when such a sight would have filled her with wonder. Now the cold just seeped into her bones, a physical echo of the emptiness spreading inside her. An elderly woman with a purple knit cap sat down beside her, struggling with several plastic shopping bags. Harper automatically moved to help her, earning a grateful smile. "You're a sweet one," the woman said, adjusting her glasses. "Not many young folks bother with old ladies like me these days." Harper managed a small smile in return. "My mother raised me better than that." "She must be proud of you then." The comment landed like a stone in Harper's chest. Her adoptive mother, Eleanor Lewis, the night shift nurse who had taken in a troubled 12-year-old foster kid when nobody else would, didn't know about Harper's diagnosis yet. Didn't know about Madison's betrayal or Ethan's weakness. Didn't know that her daughter was running away instead of fighting. "I left her a letter," Harper said quietly, more to herself than to her bench companion. The letter, 3 pages of careful explanations and half-truths, lay on Eleanor's kitchen table in her modest Phoenix bungalow. Harper had slipped it under the door that morning, knowing her mother would be sleeping after her night shift at Banner University Medical Center. The coward's way out, perhaps, but Harper couldn't bear to see the worry in her mother's eyes, couldn't stand the thought of becoming another burden for a woman who had already sacrificed so much. "I'll call when I'm settled," she had written. "I just need some time to figure things out, please don't worry." As if Eleanor Lewis, who had raised a daughter alone while working 60-hour weeks, would do anything but worry. "Bus 718 to Phoenix, now boarding," announced a disinterested voice over the crackling intercom. Harper gathered her things, nodded goodbye to the old woman, and joined the small queue forming at the terminal. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, blanketing the city in a deceptive purity. "One way?" asked the driver, a heavy-set man with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Curtis. Harper nodded, unable to speak past the unexpected lump in her throat. One way. The finality of it struck her as she climbed the steps and found a seat near the back, away from the handful of other passengers. The bus smelled of artificial pine air freshener and decades of human transit. As the engine grumbled to life, Harper pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching as the Flagstaff station, and everything it represented, began to recede. The downtown lights twinkled through the snowfall, the historic buildings and familiar landmarks growing smaller with each passing second. How many times had she walked those streets? How many coffees had she shared with Madison at late for the train? How many kisses had she exchanged with Ethan beneath the twinkling lights of Heritage Square during the holiday season? And now, none of it mattered. She was leaving it all behind, the betrayals, the humiliations, the pity she couldn't bear to face. Harper's phone vibrated in her pocket. She ignored it until the bus merged onto the highway, then reluctantly checked the screen. 3 missed calls from Ethan. 1 text message. "Please talk to me. What was in that envelope? Where are you?" With trembling fingers, Harper typed a response, then deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. Finally, she sent just 2 words. "Goodbye, Ethan." Then she turned off her phone completely, slipped it into her bag, and closed her eyes as the bus carried her south toward the desert and whatever waited for her there. The journey from Flagstaff to Phoenix took just over 2 hours, but to Harper, it felt like crossing between worlds. As the bus descended from the pine-covered mountains of northern Arizona to the sprawling desert valley, the temperature rose and the landscape transformed. The snow gave way to bare rock and saguaro cacti, sentinels watching her passage with indifferent arms raised to the sky. Harper had made this trip countless times before. Holiday visits to her mother, weekend getaways with friends, even a memorable road trip with Ethan when they'd first started dating. But never like this. Never alone. Never with cancer cells multiplying in her body and a heart splintered by betrayal. "Phoenix coming up in 15 minutes, Curtis announced over the intercom, his voice startling Harper from her thoughts. Outside her window, the sun was setting over the Valley of the Sun, painting the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold. The sprawling city stretched out before her, a maze of highways, subdivisions, and palm-lined streets. Somewhere in that maze was her mother's home. Somewhere else was the medical center where she would begin treatment next week. And somewhere, lost amid the millions of souls calling this desert home, was the person Harper Lewis might become if she survived. As the bus pulled into the terminal, Harper gathered her meager possessions and waited for the other passengers to disembark. Her legs felt strangely weak as she stood, a reminder of the physical battles that lay ahead. The Phoenix air hit her like a warm blanket as she stepped off the bus, dry and familiar, carrying the scent of creosote and exhaust. For a moment, she stood motionless on the sidewalk, overwhelmed by the finality of her decision. No dramatic goodbye scene, no tearful farewells. Just a quiet exit from a life that had crumbled around her. Harper checked the address she'd scribbled on a notepad, a small rental room near the treatment center that she'd found online. Affordable, month-to-month, utilities included. Perfect for someone whose future had contracted to a series of medical appointments and uncertainty. As she waited for the light rail that would take her across town, Harper's phone buzzed again in her bag. Against her better judgment, she turned it on to find a new Instagram notification. Madison had posted another photo, this one showing her and Ethan at their favorite spot on the edge of Lake Mary, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. The caption read, "No need to lose weight when you've already gained everything that matters. Real women get real men. Too late to change that." The cruelty was so calculated, so precise in its aim, that Harper nearly dropped her phone. How had Madison known? How could she possibly have discovered the diagnosis that Harper had kept hidden from everyone? Unless Ethan had somehow found the torn medical form. Unless he had shared that information with Madison. The betrayal, already a gaping wound, deepened impossibly further. With shaking fingers, Harper deleted her Instagram account. Not just logged out, but permanently erased. Then she shut down her Facebook, her Twitter, every digital tether to the life and people she was leaving behind. As the light rail approached, its headlights cutting through the gathering dusk, Harper took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. The decision was made. The ties were cut. Whatever came next, whether healing or heartbreak, survival or surrender, she would face it on her own terms, in her own way. No more seeking approval from those who had never truly seen her. No more building her worth on the shifting sands of others' opinions. No more being the girl who disappeared into the background of her own life. For better or worse, Harper Lewis was starting over. The antiseptic smell of Banner University Medical Center's oncology ward seemed to seep into Harper's very skin. 3 weeks into her treatment regimen, she had learned to associate that clinical scent with the particular quality of nausea that followed. Not the quick, purging sickness of food poisoning, but a deep, cellular revolt that left her hollow and trembling. "Just a little pinch now," said the nurse, a middle-aged woman with practiced efficiency and kind eyes that had witnessed too much suffering to be truly shocked by anything anymore. The needle slipped into the port that had been surgically implanted beneath Harper's collarbone, a foreign object that still felt like an invader despite its life-saving purpose. Harper turned her face toward the window, unable to watch as the clear liquid, poison and salvation in one colorless solution, began its journey into her bloodstream. Outside, Phoenix sprawled beneath a relentless November sun, the landscape painted in shades of beige and dusty green. So different from Flagstaff's pine-scented air and mountain vistas. "All set," the nurse said, adjusting the drip rate. "You know the drill by now. 4 hours for the infusion, then we'll get you some anti-nausea meds before you head home. Need anything else, honey?" Harper shook her head, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm good, thanks." But she wasn't good. Not even close. The treatments left her exhausted in ways she hadn't known were possible. Her body, once solid and sturdy enough to hike Humphrey's Peak, Flagstaff's highest mountain, now betrayed her with random moments of weakness. Simple tasks like showering or preparing a meal required careful planning and conservation of energy. And then there were the nights, endless stretches of darkness filled with fever dreams and phantom phone notifications, her mind conjuring the imagined sounds of Instagram likes and message alerts, even though she'd deleted all her social media apps. Harper settled back against the recliner, pulling the hospital blanket tighter around her shoulders despite the room's warmth. She reached for the paperback book she'd brought, a dog-eared Stephen King novel she'd read 3 times before, but couldn't focus on the words. Instead, her gaze drifted to the other patients in the infusion center. An elderly man dozing beneath a baseball cap, a middle-aged woman knitting something purple and intricate, a teenage boy with headphones and closed eyes. All of them fighting invisible battles inside their bodies just like her. "Mind if I sit here?" asked a soft voice with a slight Spanish accent. Harper looked up to find a nurse she hadn't seen before, younger than most on staff, with a gentle smile and a name tag that read, "Emilia Rodriguez, RN." "It's your hospital," Harper replied with a shrug, immediately regretting the defensiveness in her tone. Emilia didn't seem offended. She pulled up a rolling stool and sat, her posture relaxed but professional. "Actually, it's your hospital. We just work here. You're the one doing the hard part." Something about her directness caught Harper off guard. Most of the medical staff treated her with a careful combination of efficiency and practiced compassion, necessary but distant. This woman seemed different. "First time I've thought of it that way," Harper admitted. "Sometimes a change in perspective helps," Emilia said. She glanced at Harper's chart. "4th treatment today?" Harper nodded. "And no visitors yet." It wasn't a question. "I'm not from Phoenix," Harper said quickly, the lie sliding easily from her lips after weeks of practice. "My family's out of state." Emilia's dark eyes held Harper's for a moment too long, long enough to communicate that she knew this wasn't the full truth but wouldn't push. "Well, your blood counts are holding steady, which is excellent news. Your body is fighting alongside the treatment, not against it. My body and I have a complicated relationship right now," Harper said, surprising herself with the admission. A smile touched Emilia's lips. "Your body is a temple," she said, her voice taking on a rhythmic quality as if reciting something memorized long ago. "And it's fighting for you. Help it." "Is that from the nursing handbook?" Harper asked, a spark of her old humor flickering briefly. "My grandmother. She was a curandera, a healer back in Sonora," Emilia explained. She had a saying for everything, that woman. Sounds like someone worth knowing. She was. Emilia's expression softened with memory. She believed healing wasn't just physical, that the body, mind, and spirit all had to work together. Harper looked away, uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Her spirit, whatever that was, had taken a beating long before cancer cells had started multiplying in her body. Emilia seemed to sense the withdrawal. With practiced ease, she changed topics, checking Harper's vitals while asking casual questions about the book she was reading, the weather, anything but the illness or treatment. By the time the infusion finished, Harper realized 3 hours had passed in conversation. The first real human connection she'd allowed herself since arriving in Phoenix. As Emilia disconnected the IV, her movements gentle and precise, Harper found herself reluctant for the interaction to end. "Same time next week?" Emilia asked, disposing of the medical waste. Harper nodded, gathering her things. "I'll be the one in the corner looking miserable." "I'll be the one pretending not to notice," Emilia countered with a wink. The exchange, light and normal in a way nothing had felt in weeks, lingered with Harper as she made her slow way back to her rented room. The Uber driver, a chatty man in his 60s, filled the silence with stories about his grandchildren, seemingly untroubled by Harper's quiet responses. Her room, a converted garage apartment behind a main house in a modest neighborhood, was clean but sparse. A twin bed, a small kitchenette, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was private, affordable, and within walking distance of a grocery store and pharmacy for the days when she felt strong enough to venture out. Harper collapsed onto the bed, still fully dressed, as the familiar post-treatment exhaustion washed over her. Her phone, which she'd kept despite deleting her social accounts, chimed with a text from her mother. "Hope today went well, sweetheart. Call me when you're up to it. Love you." Eleanor had been devastated when Harper finally told her about the diagnosis, but had respected her daughter's strange request not to visit yet. "I need to do this my way, Mom," Harper had insisted during their tearful phone conversation. "Please understand." And because Eleanor Lewis had always been a woman who understood boundaries, having had too many of her own violated in a difficult life, she had agreed, limiting her support to daily texts and weekly phone calls. Harper typed a quick response. "All good. Tired. Talk tomorrow," then set the phone aside. Just as she was drifting into an uneasy sleep, the device buzzed again. Thinking it was her mother with a follow-up question, Harper reached for it without opening her eyes. The number was unknown, but the message stopped her heart. "I found out where you are. M doesn't know. Please let me see you. I need to explain." Harper stared at the screen, her mind suddenly alert despite her body's exhaustion. How had he found her? Who had told him? What possible explanation could erase Madison's cruelty or his betrayal? With trembling fingers, she blocked the number, then turned off the phone completely. Outside her small window, the Phoenix sky had turned the deep purple blue of desert twilight, stars beginning to appear one by one. In Flagstaff, those same stars would be brighter, the air crisper, the night deeper. Harper closed her eyes, willing sleep to come quickly. Tomorrow would bring more nausea, more weakness, more battles, both physical and emotional. But tomorrow would also bring Emilia, the first person in this new, broken life, who had looked at Harper and seen something other than illness or failure. "Your body is a temple," Harper whispered to herself, testing the words. "And it's fighting for you. Help it." Small comfort in a dark room, but comfort nonetheless. 3 months into treatment, Harper stood before the bathroom mirror in her small Phoenix apartment, a stranger's reflection staring back at her. The woman in the glass was thin, thinner than Harper had ever been, even in her most desperate teenage dieting phases. Cheekbones that had once been softly rounded now created sharp angles beneath her skin. The sweater that had fit snugly in Flagstaff now hung from her frame like a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. "This isn't what Madison meant when she called me fat," Harper whispered to her reflection. A hollow attempt at humor that fell flat in the empty bathroom. She ran her hand over her scalp, feeling the soft fuzz of new growth where her thick brown waves had once been. The hair loss had been gradual at first, extra strands on her pillow, clumps in the shower drain, until one morning she'd awakened to find her pillowcase covered with so much hair that she'd taken scissors and finished the job herself. Amelia had found her that day, sitting on the bathroom floor surrounded by fallen locks, and had wordlessly helped clean up the mess before taking Harper to a salon specializing in cancer patients. They'd fitted her with a wig so natural that sometimes even Harper forgot what lay beneath. Today, though, she left the wig on its stand. The Arizona winter was mild, but a soft beanie would be enough for her walk to the corner store. As Harper made her way down the quiet residential street, her phone vibrated in her pocket. A text from her mother. "Just checking in. Dr. Martinez called with your latest results. Things looking good, sweetheart. So proud of your strength." Harper smiled faintly, typing back a quick thank you. Eleanor had finally visited 2 months ago, spending a week in a nearby hotel, accompanying Harper to treatments and stocking her tiny kitchen with homemade meals portioned and frozen for the difficult days ahead. They'd established a new rhythm, Eleanor respecting Harper's need for independence while remaining a steadfast support system from a distance. The bell above the door jingled as Harper entered Morris Corner Market, a family-owned bodega that had become her go-to for groceries. The owner, Mr. Morris himself, a retired high school teacher with kind eyes and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, looked up from his newspaper. "Morning, Harper," he called, his voice warm with familiarity. "Fresh oranges came in today. Arizona's finest." "I'll take 4, Harper replied, grabbing a small basket. Her appetite had improved recently, and citrus fruits, tangy and vibrant, were among the few foods that consistently appealed to her post-treatment taste buds. As she browsed the modest aisles, selecting bread, peanut butter, and a pint of Ben & Jerry's Cherry Garcia, her one indulgence, Harper overheard 2 women talking near the refrigerated section. "Did you see that engagement announcement in the Flagstaff paper?" one asked, her voice carrying in the small store. "Madison Reeves and that football coach from the high school, Ethan something." Harper's hand froze mid-reach for a carton of eggs. "Oh, the pretty blonde realtor? Yeah, saw it on Facebook. Big diamond. Bigger ego. Wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of that one," the second woman replied with a laugh. "My cousin in Flag says she's a nightmare to work with, always posting those perfect couple photos but apparently screams at him in public." "Didn't she date someone else first? Some local girl who disappeared? Rumor was she got pregnant and left town in shame." The eggs nearly slipped from Harper's grasp. She steadied herself against the cooler door, suddenly lightheaded. "Ladies," Mr. Morris interrupted, his voice unusually stern as he appeared at the end of the aisle. "That's enough gossip for one morning, don't you think?" The women, looking appropriately chastised, quickly paid for their items and left. "Mr." Morris approached Harper, concern etched in the lines around his eyes. "You okay there?" he asked quietly. Harper nodded, unable to trust her voice. "Small towns have long memories but poor eyesight," he said cryptically. "They see what they want to see, not what's really there." Harper looked at him sharply. "You know I'm from Flagstaff?" Mr. Morris shrugged. "Your prescriptions come from there originally. I notice things. Old habit from teaching high school for 30 years. He paused, then added gently, "Whatever you're running from, it doesn't define you." Harper paid for her groceries in silence, Mr. Morris's words echoing in her mind as she walked home. Back in her apartment, she set down her bags and, against her better judgment, pulled out her laptop. It took less than 30 seconds to find Madison's engagement announcement, splashed across social media, despite Harper having deleted all her accounts. The algorithm still knew who she was, who she had been connected to. Technology's memory was longer than the town's. Madison beamed from the screen, her perfect teeth gleaming, her hand positioned just so to highlight the ostentatious diamond on her finger. Beside her, Ethan smiled tightly, his eyes not quite matching the expression on his lips. The caption read, "She said yes. Love prevails, forever and always. Perfect match." The comment section overflowed with congratulations, heart emojis, and wedding planning advice. But one exchange caught Harper's eye. "What happened to that other girl you guys used to hang with? The bigger one?" Madison's reply: "Lost touch. Heard she moved away to lose weight or something. Too little, too late though. Best life ever." Harper closed the laptop with more force than necessary, her heart pounding in her chest. The cruelty still had the power to sting, even now, even after everything else her body had endured. She walked to her small bathroom and stared again at her reflection. Yes, she had lost weight. Too much weight, but not for vanity or to keep a man. She had lost it fighting for her life, one cell at a time, one day at a time. "Even weak, I keep going," Harper whispered to herself, echoing the mantra Amelia had taught her during her darkest days of treatment. "Because my worth doesn't depend on anyone else." Later that evening, as Harper sat on her small balcony watching the sunset paint the Phoenix sky in shades of orange and pink, her phone rang. The screen displayed a Flagstaff area code, but not a number she recognized. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Harper, it's Claire." Claire Donovan from Flagstaff Medical Center. Harper frowned, trying to place the name. "Dr. Donovan's office?" "Yes, I'm his administrative assistant. I'm calling because, well, this is unusual, but I thought you should know. Someone's been trying to access your medical records several times now." A chill ran through Harper's body that had nothing to do with the evening air. "Who?" "We can't disclose that due to privacy laws, but I can tell you it wasn't your mother or anyone with authorization." Claire paused. "Harper, are you safe where you are? Do you need resources?" "I'm fine," Harper replied automatically. "But thank you for letting me know." After hanging up, Harper sat motionless, watching as the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the distant mountains. Someone was looking for her, digging through her past, piecing together the puzzle of her disappearance. Inside her apartment, a small calendar hung on the refrigerator door. On it, Harper had been marking off treatment days with red X's. The final scheduled treatment was circled in bold marker just 3 weeks away. Beside it, in smaller writing, she had noted another date. Wedding, Flagstaff. The gossip in the market had confirmed what Harper had already suspected. Madison and Ethan were planning their perfect day, their perfect life, while spreading the perfect lies about the girl they'd left behind. Harper touched the thin gold chain around her neck, a gift from Amelia after a particularly difficult week, and felt the small pendant that hung from it, a tiny phoenix rising from ashes. "Maybe it's time," she whispered to the darkening sky. "Time to stop running. Time to finish this." The decision settled in her chest, not with the hot burn of revenge, but with the steady warmth of resolution. Whatever happened next, Harper Lewis would face it on her own terms. She was no longer the invisible girl. The Greyhound bus rolled into Flagstaff under a sky heavy with spring clouds. Harper pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching as familiar landmarks emerged from the landscape. The imposing silhouette of the San Francisco peaks, still capped with snow, the vintage neon sign of the Monte Vista Hotel, the distinctive tower of the old train station downtown. 6 months had passed since she'd last seen these sights, but they remained etched in her memory with painful clarity. Flagstaff, Arizona. 15-minute rest stop, announced the driver as the bus lurched to a halt in the station. Harper remained seated while other passengers filed out, stretching their legs and seeking vending machine refreshments. She wasn't ready, not yet, to step back onto the soil of a town that had witnessed both her deepest joy and most profound humiliation. Her fingers traced the outline of the white envelope in her coat pocket, its edges worn from constant handling over the past weeks. A text message illuminated her phone screen. "Are you there yet? Remember what we discussed? This is for you, not them." Amelia, her nurse, her confidant, her unexpected friend, had become Harper's strongest advocate during recovery. When Harper had first mentioned returning to Flagstaff for the wedding, Amelia had neither encouraged nor discouraged the plan. Instead, she'd helped Harper prepare emotionally, spending hours talking through scenarios and boundaries. "Final boarding call for Flagstaff passengers," the driver announced. startling Harper from her thoughts. It was now or never. Harper gathered her small suitcase and stepped off the bus into the crisp mountain air. At 7,000 feet elevation, Flagstaff Spring felt like winter compared to Phoenix's desert heat. She pulled her light jacket tighter around her slender frame, suddenly aware of how differently it hung on her body now. The town was preparing for weekend tourists. College students from NAU walking downtown, locals bustling through farmers' market stalls in Heritage Square, mountain bikers loading gear for trails on the outskirts. No one gave Harper a second glance as she made her way toward the small hotel she'd booked 3 blocks from the station. No one recognized her. The realization was both liberating and disconcerting. The Harper Lewis who had fled Flagstaff 6 months ago, the fat girl of Madison's cruel Instagram posts, the betrayed girlfriend, the invisible friend, had physically disappeared. The woman who returned was 45 pounds lighter, her once long brown hair now a short pixie cut that accentuated cheekbones no one knew she had. Her posture straight rather than perpetually apologetic. Cancer and heartbreak had sculpted her into someone new, someone who moved through the world without seeking permission to exist. At the hotel, a modest chain establishment with clean rooms and minimal personal interaction, Harper checked in and collapsed onto the bed. Tomorrow was the wedding. Tomorrow, the circle that had begun with betrayal would close, one way or another. Her phone buzzed again, another text from Amelia. "Did you eat today? Remember, your body fought for you. Don't neglect it now." Harper smiled faintly at the motherly reminder. She'd texted back a quick affirmative, then scrolled through local restaurant options for dinner delivery. The thought of encountering anyone from her past before she was ready sent anxiety spiraling through her chest. As she waited for her food to arrive, Harper unpacked the single dress she'd brought, a simple slate blue sheath that Amelia had helped her select. Not black, too obvious, not white, too provocative, not red, too angry. Just a quiet, dignified blue that matched her eyes and complemented her new frame. "You're not going to cause a scene," Amelia had reminded her while they shopped. "You're going for closure." The hotel room television provided background noise as Harper picked at her delivered salad. Local news gave way to weather, sports scores, and finally, community announcements. And wedding bells will ring tomorrow for local realtor Madison Reeves and Flagstaff High School coach Ethan Parker. The ceremony at historic Nativity Church downtown promises to be the social event of the season, with reception to follow at the exclusive Forest Highlands Golf Club. Harper muted the television, her appetite suddenly gone. Seeing their names together, hearing them spoken aloud, it still had the power to constrict her chest, even after all these months, even after everything else she'd endured. The envelope in her pocket seemed to grow heavier. Inside, medical records, treatment summaries, and most damning of all, the letter Ethan had sent her 3 months ago while she was still deep in chemotherapy. That letter had arrived unexpectedly at her Phoenix treatment center. How he'd found her there remained a mystery, its contents so shocking that Harper had nearly thrown it away unread. But curiosity had won out, and the words inside had changed everything. "If you survive this, I'll leave it all behind to be with you. What I did was unforgivable. M is not who you think, not who I thought either. I made a terrible mistake. Please, Harper, let me know you're okay. I can't live with myself if you're not." The letter had been signed with his familiar scrawl and a coffee stain in the corner. So quintessentially Ethan that it had made her heart ache despite everything. She'd read it 17 times that night, tears streaming down her face before placing it carefully in a drawer and telling no one, not even Amelia, about its existence. Now, the night before their wedding, that letter sat in the envelope alongside medical documents that chronicled Harper's battle. A battle neither Madison nor Ethan knew she'd been fighting while they planned their perfect day. Harper's phone buzzed with a notification, not a text this time but a local news alert. She opened it to find a photo of Madison at her rehearsal dinner, resplendent in white diamond engagement ring catching the light as she gestured animatedly to guests. The caption identified notable attendees, Flagstaff business owners and social figures all gathered to celebrate. In the background of one photo, barely visible but unmistakable to Harper's eye, was Ethan. His expression not of a joyful groom, but of a man fulfilling an obligation, his smile not reaching his eyes, his posture rigid with what Harper recognized as discomfort. The man who had written that desperate letter was still there, trapped beneath social expectations and his own poor choices. Harper closed the app and moved to the window, drawing back the curtain to look out at the town she'd once called home. Streetlights illuminated the wet pavement. It had begun to rain, and late-night pedestrians hurried with collars turned up against the mountain chill. Tomorrow she would put on the blue dress. Tomorrow she would take a seat in the back of Nativity Church. Tomorrow, when the priest asked if anyone had reason to object to this union, Harper Lewis would stand. Not for revenge. Not even for justice, but for the truth. Her truth, that had been buried beneath lies and cruelty for too long. Harper touched the phoenix pendant at her throat, feeling its delicate wings beneath her fingertips. "Remember why you're here," she whispered to herself, echoing Amelia's constant refrain. "Not to win him back, not to hurt her, but to reclaim your story." Outside, the rain fell harder, washing the streets of Flagstaff clean as Harper prepared for the most difficult performance of her life. Not as victim, not as victor, but as survivor. The roles had been assigned, the stage set, the audience assembled. All that remained was for the curtain to rise on the final act of a drama that had begun with a birthday cupcake crushed against a heartbroken girl's chest. Tomorrow, that girl would finally have her say. Nativity Church stood like a stone sentinel against the morning sky, its stained glass windows catching the spring sunlight in kaleidoscopic fragments. Inside, the scent of fresh lilies and anticipation hung heavy in the air as Flagstaff's social elite filled the wooden pews, their Sunday best on display for what the local paper had dubbed the wedding of the season. Harper slipped through the heavy oak doors just as the organist began the prelude, a classical piece whose melancholy undertones seemed at odds with the occasion. She wore the slate blue dress like armor, its simple elegance highlighting her transformed physique. A small hat with a wisp of netting partially obscured her face, not enough to hide her identity, but sufficient to delay immediate recognition. An usher with a polite smile approached, program in hand. Bride's side or groom's? The question, so innocuous, so loaded, caught Harper off guard. She wasn't there for either of them, not really. "I'm a mutual friend," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. The usher nodded, gesturing toward the back rows. "We're seating late arrivals toward the rear." "Perfect." Harper slid into a spot in the third-to-last row, partially concealed by a floral arrangement on a pedestal. From this vantage point, she could observe without being observed, at least initially. The church filled quickly, the excited murmur of conversation rising and falling like waves. Harper recognized faces from her former life, teachers from high school, regular customers from the diner where she'd waitressed, neighbors who had never bothered to learn her name but now dressed in finery to celebrate Madison's special day. Near the front, Madison's parents beamed with barely contained pride. Mr. Reeves, a successful real estate developer who had given his daughter everything except the ability to be kind, checked his Rolex with practiced casualness. Mrs. Reeves, whose own social ambitions had always outpaced her husband's considerable success, adjusted a hat that must have cost more than Harper's monthly rent. The side door opened, and Ethan appeared with his groomsmen, fellow coaches and former teammates, all wearing identical gray tuxedos with pale pink boutonnieres. Harper's breath caught in her throat at the sight of him. He looked thinner, the angles of his face more pronounced, dark circles beneath eyes that scanned the crowd with what appeared to be apprehension rather than joy. For a split second, their gazes connected across the church. Ethan froze, color draining from his face, recognition dawning in his eyes. Harper held his stare, unflinching, refusing to be the first to look away. A groomsman clapped Ethan's shoulder, breaking the moment and guiding him to his position before the altar. The organist transitioned to the traditional wedding march, and the congregation rose as one, turning toward the entrance. Madison appeared in a cloud of designer white, her dress a confection of lace and crystals that caught the light with every movement. Her blonde hair had been arranged in an elaborate updo beneath a cathedral-length veil, and her smile, practiced, perfect, revealed teeth whitened to an unnatural brightness. As she glided down the aisle on her father's arm, her gaze swept the congregation like a queen surveying her subjects. When her eyes reached Harper's section, they passed over, then snapped back, narrowing slightly before widening in shock. The smile faltered just for a moment, a micro-expression that few would notice but that Harper cataloged with grim satisfaction. Madison knew, and knowing Harper was present clearly terrified her. The ceremony proceeded with rehearsed precision. The priest spoke of love and commitment, of journeys shared and burdens halved. Harper listened to the familiar words with a strange detachment, the white envelope heavy in her hands. Around her, guests dabbed at sentimental tears or smiled indulgently at particularly poetic passages. "Marriage is not to be entered into lightly," the priest intoned, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling, "but reverently, discreetly, advisedly, soberly, and in the fear of God." Harper noticed Ethan's hands trembling slightly as he repeated his vows, his voice barely audible in the cavernous space. Madison's responses, by contrast, rang out with theatrical clarity, each word enunciated as if for an audience much larger than the church could hold. Then came the moment Harper had rehearsed in her mind for weeks, the scene she had played out with Amelia during long evenings of preparation. "If any person present knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." The traditional challenge hung in the air, usually nothing more than a ceremonial pause before the final blessing. But today, in Nativity Church, with sunlight streaming through stained glass and illuminating dust motes like tiny stars, the silence stretched beyond comfort. Harper rose slowly from her seat. The collective intake of breath was audible, a unified gasp followed by absolute silence. Madison's face contorted in fury, barely concealed behind her veil. Ethan looked relieved, terrified, both simultaneously. Phones emerged from purses and pockets, their cameras focused on Harper as she made her way deliberately toward the altar, the envelope clutched in hands that refused to tremble. The click of her modest heels on the stone floor echoed in the shocked silence. She stopped at the first pew, not approaching the altar itself, a deliberate choice to avoid appearing threatening. Up close, Madison's makeup couldn't hide the rage transforming her features, while Ethan's complexion had gone ashen. "Harper," he whispered, the word barely audible. Madison found her voice first, a brittle laugh that contained no humor. "Really, Harper? This pathetic display? You lost and came back to beg?" Harper didn't respond to Madison. Instead, she extended the envelope toward Ethan, her movements deliberate and calm. "I believe you should see what's in here before you say I do." With visible reluctance, or was it anticipation, Ethan took the envelope. His fingers brushed hers in the exchange, and Harper was surprised to feel nothing. No spark of electricity, no remnant of the love that had once consumed her. Just the cool certainty that she was finally doing what needed to be done. Ethan opened the envelope with shaking hands, his eyes widening as he recognized his own letter among the medical documents. Tears formed immediately, tracking down his cheeks as he read the evidence of Harper's battle. The cancer diagnosis that had arrived almost simultaneously with his betrayal, the treatments she'd endured alone, the fight for her life that had transpired while he planned a wedding to her former best friend. "What is it?" Madison demanded, trying to snatch the papers from his hands. "What ridiculous drama is she trying to create now?" But Ethan held the documents away from Madison's grabbing hands, his expression transforming from shock to shame to something like wonder as he looked at Harper, really looked at her, for the first time since she'd entered the church. "You survived," he whispered, his voice breaking on the second word. Harper nodded once, a simple acknowledgement of a complex truth. Madison finally succeeded in grabbing the letter, her eyes scanning the page with increasing horror. "If you survive, I'll leave it all behind to be with you," she read aloud, her voice rising with each word. "What the hell is this, Ethan? What did you do?" The congregation had abandoned any pretense of decorum, whispers and exclamations creating a rising tide of chaos. Phones recorded every moment of the unfolding drama, social media algorithms already working overtime to spread what would undoubtedly become Flagstaff's most viral moment of the year. Harper stood quietly amid the storm, her purpose fulfilled. She had not come to create this spectacle, but neither would she shrink from it. The truth, her truth, was finally exposed to the light, and whatever happened next was beyond her control. She looked directly at Madison, whose perfect day was disintegrating around her, and spoke with quiet dignity that somehow cut through the growing commotion. "I didn't come back to be loved. I came back to remember that I survived what you both tried to destroy in me." The silence that followed Harper's words seemed to crystallize the air inside Nativity Church, transforming the space into a tableau of frozen expressions and suspended breath. Madison stood at the altar, her perfect white gown suddenly appearing too tight, too ostentatious, as if the fabric itself were constricting around her with the weight of exposed lies. The letter trembled in her manicured hands, her knuckles white with tension. This is ridiculous," she finally sputtered, her voice pitched higher than normal. "A desperate attempt for attention. Pathetic." She turned to the stunned congregation, gesturing with frantic energy. "Can't you all see what she's doing? She couldn't accept that Ethan chose me, so she's making up stories about... It's not made up." Ethan's voice, low but clear, cut through Madison's escalating protestations. He held the medical reports with reverent care, as if they might disintegrate at his touch. "She had cancer, Madison. Stage 2. While you were posting those things about her weight. While we were..." He couldn't finish the sentence, shame visibly washing over him in a tide that bent his shoulders and lowered his gaze. Madison's face contorted, calculations clearly running behind her eyes as she assessed the damage control required. With practiced precision, she transitioned from defensive outrage to performative concern, reaching for Harper with a hand that seemed more claw than comfort. "Oh my God, Harper, why didn't you tell us? We would have been there for you, of course we would have, after everything we've been through together." Harper took a deliberate step backward, evading Madison's touch. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't pretend now. Not after what you wrote about me. Not after what you took from me." From the front pew, Mrs. Reeves rose with the rigid dignity of someone accustomed to managing social catastrophes. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in private," she suggested, her voice honey-coated steel. "Reverend Mitchell, if we could use your office." "No." The word came not from Harper or Madison, but from Ethan, who had moved away from the altar to stand in the center aisle, the papers still clutched in his hand. "No more hiding, no more pretending." He turned to face the congregation, many of whom were recording every moment on their phones. "I need to say something." Madison lunged forward, grabbing his arm. "Ethan, don't you dare. Don't you dare ruin this for me." But he gently extracted himself from her grip, his focus entirely on Harper now. "I wrote this letter 3 months ago," he said, holding up the evidence of his betrayal, not of Madison, but of himself. "I found out Harper was sick. I went through her medical records, used connections to track her down." A murmur rippled through the church at this admission. "I promised I'd leave everything behind if she survived, but I never heard back. I assumed..." His voice cracked. "I assumed the worst, that she was gone, that I'd lost my chance to make things right." Madison's face had transformed into a mask of pure fury. With unexpected violence, she snatched the medical reports from Ethan's hands and threw them to the ground, pages scattering across the polished stone floor like fallen leaves. "So what if she was sick? So what if she lost weight because of it? That doesn't change anything. You chose me." Madison's voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling, stripped of all pretense now, raw with the entitlement that had always lurked beneath her polished exterior. "You don't get to back out now because you feel guilty, or because she finally got skinny enough to make you want her again." A collective gasp rose from the guests. Even by the standards of wedding disasters, this was unprecedented. Mrs. Reeves collapsed back into her seat, while Mr. Reeves stared straight ahead, his expression suggesting he was mentally calculating the non-refundable deposits on the reception venue. Harper watched the scene with a strange detachment, as if viewing it from a great distance. This moment, which she had both dreaded and anticipated for months, felt almost anticlimactic now that it had arrived. The anger that had sustained her through the darkest nights of treatment had burned away, leaving only clarity in its wake. "I didn't come here to take him back," Harper said, her voice quiet but somehow penetrating every corner of the church. "I didn't come here to ruin your wedding." "Then why?" Madison demanded, tears of rage now streaking her perfect makeup. "Why show up now like this?" Harper knelt to gather the scattered medical reports, the physical evidence of her journey. As she rose, a strange thing happened. People in the pews nearest her leaned forward to help, collecting pages and handing them to her with gestures of unexpected gentleness. An older woman Harper recognized as her former English teacher, a young man who had worked alongside her at the diner, faces from her past life, witnessing her present strength. "I came because the story you were telling about me wasn't true," Harper said simply. "You made me believe I was small. You made others believe I disappeared because I was ashamed. You used my body as a weapon against me." She straightened, standing taller than she ever had in Madison's presence. "But my body fought for me when you both abandoned me. My body carried me through hell and back. And I refuse to let you rewrite that story." A silence fell, different from the shocked hush that had preceded it. This was a silence of recognition, of uncomfortable truth acknowledged. Ethan stepped forward, his face streaked with tears. "Harper, She raised her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "I didn't come for your apology either. Or your guilt. Or whatever promise you made when you thought I might die." She turned, addressing not just Ethan and Madison now, but the entire congregation. The community that had watched her fade into invisibility, that had consumed Madison's crafted narrative without question. "I came because I needed to look at what almost destroyed me and know that it doesn't have that power anymore. Not the cancer, not the betrayal, not the public humiliation." She took a deep breath, feeling lighter with each word. "I came to return the weight I've been carrying, the shame that was never mine to bear." With that, Harper began walking down the aisle toward the church doors, her steps measured and deliberate. Behind her, chaos erupted. Madison's angry sobs, Ethan's attempted explanations, the rising tide of whispered commentary from guests. But Harper didn't turn back, didn't falter, didn't shrink into herself as she once would have. As she reached the heavy wooden doors, a scattering of applause broke out, tentative at first, then growing in confidence. Not a standing ovation, not a theatrical triumph, but something quieter and more profound. Acknowledgement, recognition of courage, respect. Outside, the Arizona spring sunshine bathed Harper's face in warmth as she descended the church steps. And there, waiting beside a rental car with Arizona plates, stood Amelia, her nurse, her friend, her witness, holding a bouquet of wildflowers and wearing an expression of fierce pride. "You did it," Amelia said simply, embracing Harper with careful strength. Harper nodded, emotion finally cracking the composure she'd maintained throughout the confrontation. "It's over." As they drove away from Nativity Church, leaving behind the wreckage of Madison's perfect day, Harper rolled down the window and let the mountain air fill her lungs. Her final words, spoken softly but carrying the weight of absolute truth, lingered in the space between them. "Life didn't punish those who hurt me. It just taught me that I never again deserve to abandon myself." Sometimes the heaviest burdens we carry aren't the ones others place on us, but the ones we accept as our own. Harper's journey reminds us that true strength isn't found in revenge or even in forgiveness. It's found in reclaiming your own story when others try to write it for you. What would you have done in Harper's position? Would you have had the courage to walk back into that church, not to win someone back, but to stand in your truth? We all face betrayals in life, perhaps not as dramatic as Harper's. but painful nonetheless. The question isn't whether we'll be hurt, but what we'll do with that hurt. Will we let it define us? Or will we, like Harper, transform it into a strength that carries us forward? Remember her powerful words. Life didn't punish those who hurt me. It just taught me that I never again deserve to abandon myself. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful stories to light. And remember, in a world that sometimes tries to make you feel invisible, your story matters and you have every right to tell it.